Good morning, Winston Capital Advisors podcast of September 17. You see a beautiful background. I am today, this weekend, enjoying a great weekend with my friends from boarding school in Argentina. We're having a great time in Pompano Beach, California, Miami, Florida. Great weather, great sun, great beach. So I'll do the podcast for September 17 again, and hope you enjoy. So what we're going to talk today, markets at new records, a little bit of Bitcoin, new thing, Portugal, Irma, what happened, Apple, big news on the week, a little bit of an article on barons in Argentina for the first time in a long time, what's the news on Amazon. We had them last week, but I think they're worth repeating again. The trade that we put last week, giving up on energy and financials and putting that money to work in Chile. Let me correct the camera a little bit. Give me 1 second. There you go. I think it's better this way. All right. Yep. A little bit of what happened in the FX world. What were the moves there? And then news in our dear Brazil. And then, like always, what to expect for next week. What's relevant? What's important? Right. So let's go with the markets. The market had a great rally. The Dow was up 2.2%. The S&P was up 1.6%. Good earnings, good story, but a good rally on the dollar, prompted by, by President Trump, crossing the aisle, reaching out to the opposition. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we speak about FX. But I think that has helped the market rally and set new records in the Dow and in the S&P. So positive for that side. Bitcoin, Jamie Dimon, president of JP Morgan, chairman and CEO of JP Morgan, made a comment that he thinks that it's a complete speculation, that the thing is going to end up pretty bad, and he could not touch it with a 10-foot pole. Also, on that note, the Chinese government basically outlawing all the exchanges that traded in Bitcoin, almost from $5,000 to, I think, under $3,000. Again, Bitcoin together with Tesla are two things that I do not understand, and I have a problem, trying to figure out how to value them, to see if they make sense. But, they are clearly in the news every day. Portugal, upgraded by S&P to investment grade for BB plus to BBB minus. Very good news there. As I say, this is one of the countries that went into the financial crisis together with Spain, together with Greece. But in a way, the good example of Portugal that, got into austerity measures, cuts on the fiscal deficits, work on tax collection, things that the European Central Bank and the European authorities, together with the IMF, recommended, implemented, and the countries are coming up. Which is interesting is they're coming up with great growth in the economy, great drop in the unemployment rate. If you look at the numbers, and we've been talking about the numbers for a while, Europe is doing very well. You have these outliers like Spain, Portugal, Poland, the Czech Republic, which are really showing impressive numbers in terms of economic performance. So good news on that side. A little bit on Irma. The good news is that it passed. Unfortunately, there was about 82 people who died. But, what originally was expected to be, $150 billion to $200 billion hurricane cost, it's now, we're thinking of 30 to 50 billion. So it's very good on that side. And since I am in Miami right now, in Florida, there is now Hurricane Maria that just formed in the same place that Irma, so far looking at the same path through the Caribbean islands, north of Puerto Rico, north of Cuba, and then who knows what. But, too early to tell. What is not too early to know is that the hurricane season is not over. We have Hurricane Jose, hovering in the Atlantic. Apparently it's going to go offshore, but it's going to create a tremendous swell to the eastern coast of the United States. So be careful if you are on the beach still around. The big news of the week, obviously, was Apple, the $1,000 phone, the new line of phones, plus the new phones. And still reviews are sketchy. Only if you are in the Wall Street Journal, the FT, or the big boys of media, you get to review the phone. If you're anybody else, you don't get to review the phone. You don't get to touch it. So it's kind of early, but I read most of the reviews from the big media, and the big thing is this thing of augmented reality. Make a note, augmented reality. And as I say, this is the big bet of Apple. This fact that the phone does face recognition, and with that face recognition, not only unlocks your phone, but also creates these, emojis, and you can add things and characters, and your emojis express your expression. when the first iPhone came out 10 years ago, the big thing of the iPhone was not that it was digital or that it was an Apple phone or that it had some applications. The many phones in the world had that already. The big thing is like now, when you bought the next phone, all the upgrades were automatically. Remember, in the old times, when you bought a new phone, you have to transpass all the information from one place to another. Remember the Pilot, remember the Trio, remember the Motorola phones. I mean, they were quasi-smarts. They had some quasi-smart applications, but once you migrated to the new phone, that's it. You couldn't do it. Apple was the first one to do that, and from then, things like Facebook, Instagram, the front-facing cameras came up, and now we talk like they've been with us for years, and they are relatively very new. So the big bet is augmented reality. Remember the Pokemon game that people search for these little things in wherever in the planet, and they show up in your reality. So this is the big thing. Have it in mind. Listen, sometimes these things don't work out, and they are bad, and they are a flop. Sometimes they are revealing. I think that's where technology is trying to go with the thing. It can really add a lot of value. So we'll be looking into that. Also, there is a new watch that it has its own connectivity to the internet, and it's very interesting. You can see I have this. This is the first generation watch. The second had a GPS and is waterproof. This third one has connectivity. The very interesting thing with the watch is like I have the old one, works perfect, not a problem. The hardware is spectacular, but I have no need to buy the new watches because GPS and swimming I don't do, and then a phone that connects to the internet or directly to the networks directly, I don't do. So, but my point is like there is a portfolio of new applications as the technology and the cost permit to do so, which I think is very good. Apple doesn't disclose the numbers for their telephone sales, but many people estimate that it's having a serious impact on that. I've been saying that to all of you. Be careful. Like the iPhone completely disrupted the telephone industry. I see a very similar pattern with the watches. The watch is a $62 billion industry. It's about 1 billion watches sold every year. Obviously, we have the luxury brands and all that. We know that. But be careful, because this thing, like the smartphones now are everywhere. I think this thing will have a very similar path. And remember, Apple has no rush. They want to have a product that is perfect, that it doesn't fail, that the hardware performs. So be on the look for that story. All right, let's move on. Good article of Barron's on Argentina. Recommended. I summarized it. Some people on the article says Argentina is the trade of the decade. New government, we have elections in October. They're very positive on President Mauricio Macri and the country moving to a more free market economics, away from populist leftist policies. The valuations are very compelling. Obviously the banks, they name companies that we like Pampa Energía, Transportadora de Gas del Sur, Banco Supervil, Banco Macro en Galicia. I like it. It's a small article. I send it to some of you. If you want to get the article, let me know. I'll be happy to send it to you again. We spoke about this last week, but clearly the last week big news, this past week was Apple, the week before was Amazon, and the request, RFP, for a new headquarters, a second home. It was a list of a lot of qualitative things. It's a $5 billion investment with 50,000 employees, and things like 45 minutes from an international airport, no more than 4 miles for the interconnected highway system of the United States, a city that offers big in recreation and cultural activity, parks, serious public transportation infrastructure, a good housing situation for all levels of society, diversity of the pool of work, close to a serious university for research, etc., etc. Very interesting. That Friday, 2 Fridays ago, 5 cities had emerged, or at least raised their hands: Dallas, Denver, San Diego, Chicago, and Toronto. The New York Times ran a study on the RFP and said that Denver was the most likely to win. I think the Journal or someone else came and said, no, Boston is the winner. And then Amazon came and said, listen, we don't know yet. Once you meet all the conditions, we have to sit down and discuss tax conditions for us, for our employees. So, ways to go, but I think it's a very, very interesting piece of news. One trade that we gave up and we replaced it last week We sold XLE, the ETF of energy, X-Ray Lima Eco, and we also sold the financials, X-Ray Lima Frank. I gave up on energy. These two sectors are cheap. They were part of the Trump rally, but for different reasons. Oil, because of the price of oil went down. The companies managed to pull good earnings, but at the end, they're not doing anything. I mean, and if you look at it, the sector is down. I bought it because I thought it was cheap. Oil is the only commodity that is seriously down. It's almost 20% down for the year. The other commodities are okay, but honestly, I gave up because I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Same with the financials. Big promise, raising rates, deregulation. The market rallied, the financials did very well, but since then they have done nothing. I mean, clearly with the issue of the rates is not happening. It's going very slow. We have no inflation. We have good growth, but no inflation. So the whole issue of rates is not happening. The 210 spread that measures how banks, borrow cheap and lend expensive has collapsed. So clearly they're going to be making less money. So I gave up on those two, and so I put that money into Chile, Eco Charlie Hotel, the ETF of Chile. The market has discounted that Sebastián Piñera will win the elections, a man from center-right, free market politician. But I think what the market has not discounted is the business climate. Talking to large clients and investors in Chile over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I sense that for the first time they are very positive. I've been doing business there for more than 20 years. They always were very positive. But for some reason, in the second government of President Bachelet, they turned very, very negative. And the business sentiment was very negative. So I see this change. I think that change is not into the market, and also it's been helped by a good rally in the copper markets, which also has helped the Chilean peso. So positive on that side. I like it. ECH, a trade for you. Let's go a little bit about the review of FX for the week. Big rally on the British pound, 133 from almost 128 to the cable, as they say, to the dollar. On comments of Mark Kearney, President of Bank of England, saying, well, we're getting very close to raise rates. Now I'm seeing the signs of inflation that I'm looking for. He didn't say which ones, but that's what he said. And it's going to be the first raise in interest in a decade. Remember, we had 2 weeks ago raising rates in Canada. So 133 on the pound, positive on that they will have, again, the first move in 10 years. And also big raise on the dollar, 118 on the euro, and similar. I forgot the number with the yen. I think it's 112. Why? Because as I said at the beginning, President Trump reached to the other aisle with the Nancy Pelosi and Senator Schumer, and they put a deal together to avoid the government shutdown and fix this debt ceiling issue. Passed to December. In a way, President Trump bypassed his own party, but I think it's positive when you reach to the opposition and you get a deal. This fed the idea that we're going to have a tax deal before year end. President Trump is already considering on DACA, the plan for the sons of immigrants. And as of Friday, I think, the Wall Street Journal reported that even it could concede on the funding of the Mexican wall in exchange for this tax deal. And in which he also said that the rich people will be not paying less taxes. The less taxes are for the middle class, for the people who work, so that will create jobs. And also, here is the connection with the market, very important, trying to lower the corporate tax rate, from 30-something to 15%. And if you pay next year or on a relatively short period of time, instead of 15, will be 10. According to many analysts, the Googles, the Microsoft, the Oracles of the world that has billions and billions of dollars stashed outside of the United States, for this issue of double taxation, will bring the money, and most likely that money will be used, according to many analysts, to buy back the shares, or share repurchases. So at the end of the day, what we're going to have is, more money, less shares available, and hence the market is rallying. So as I said earlier, with all these, sometimes putting the connections on all these dots, it gets complicated. But basically, with all this issue of, a better climate in Washington, willing to reach an agreement between your party and the opposition. It feeds on the possibility of this tax cut that, again, will feed on these share repurchases. The market discounted, the dollar market discounted, so positive on that side. Close to the finish, Brazil, the saga continues. Now President Temer is being indicted again on new charges of corruption, and then the Batista brothers in jail on a tragicomic story that they got impunity because they rat their friends in terms of corruption, but then they somehow were making fun of the system because they were telling people that they only told half of what they knew and they still got full impunity. That record or that tape was sent by accident, repeat, by accident from their lawyers to the prosecutor. They got it. So basically, if you get impunity, you have to fess up everything that you know, which they didn't. So now they're in jail. Almost a tragicomic story. And just on closing, what to expect next week. Wednesday, we have 2 days of meeting of the Federal Reserve, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday is the last day. We don't expect any change in rates, but we might get something on this famous portfolio of bonds, see how they do it, see what they do. Rosh Hashanah on Wednesday. Happy holidays for our Jewish friends that celebrate it. And then we have next week many presidents of the Federal Reserve System, Williams, George, Yellen, the chairman, Draghi of Europe. Many are speaking in different conferences, so we'll have a lot of, Federal Reserve speak, and also from the European side, so we'll be paying attention to that. And finally, we have on Sunday German elections, where it's expected that Chancellor Merkel wins on a I wouldn't say not narrow, no big, but just he wins with certain comfort. And very important, and in closing, Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European Union, said that this is the time to grab on the opportunity. We've already had elections in France, England, Italy last year, now Germany. So we'll be on a window of opportunity without campaigning, without elections. This will be the time to sit down and keep working on structural reforms. So we'll be paying attention to that. These things could cause moves in the markets or opportunities for us to invest. But that's still weeks to come. Again, from beautiful Pompano Beach in Miami, thank you very much. Have a great week. We'll reconnect next Sunday.